to offer, as well as some information about the LGBTQIA plus community in general.
All right. So let me just start sharing this PowerPoint. All right. Everybody can see my screen, correct? Yeah, perfect. All right. So it's all yours, Joy.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you all for having me here today. I'm really honored to be here with you all. So like I said, I work with Positive Images, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about our services and what we do. So next slide, please. So we have an LGBTQIA plus community center in downtown Santa Rosa. And we have a lot of things we do there. We offer resources and referrals. So if someone needs some support, or if they need a referral to some services that are LGBTQ affirming, whether that's therapy or doctors or whatever, we can help with that. We also have a media library. So it's mostly books, but we also have some other movies and DVDs that people can check out. And it's mostly stuff pertaining to the LGBTQ community, but not exclusively. We also have computers. So if people need to work on homework, they need to work on a job application, anything like that, they can come into our space and have a safe place to do that for free. We also have a transformation station, and this is a clothing closet that people can take clothes from for free. So this is mostly to support people if they are exploring their gender or the way they express themselves. But it's really for anyone. We know that a lot of people in our community are struggling with homelessness or poverty, and we want these clothes to be free as a resource to anyone who needs it. And then we also just have a community meeting space. So we let other groups use our community center free of charge, so that we can support other groups in our community as well. One of the main things we do is a youth support group, and this is for ages 12 to 18, and it's mostly attended by ages 12 to 16. And we do a lot of different stuff in this support group. We have check-in nights at least once, often twice a month, where young folks can come and check in about whatever they need to. They can get support, they can get something off their chest, and get some feedback if they want it. We also do a lot of fun stuff with the young people. We do social events, so we'll get to know each other and we'll play games with each other. And then we also talk about important topics like body positivity or good self-care, stuff like that. And then we also have an adult support group, and it's run very similarly to the adult support group, but it's exclusively for people 18 and up. And finally, we have a leadership development program, and this is designed to elevate the personal and professional skills of our members. So basically, we know that there are probably a lot of people in our young members' lives who are telling them what to do, telling them, you know, you should do this, you should do that. And that's important sometimes, right? That's what adults are good for with young people. But at the same time, we want to make sure that these youth have a voice and that they have the space to, you know, say what they think is important and talk about what they want to do and what kind of services they want to see from us. So twice a week, our leadership team gets together, and it's a group of young people who say, hey, this is what we think is important. These are the kind of groups and services that we want to see. And then they lead those groups themselves. So it teaches them leadership and community building and, you know, confidence in public speaking, important skills like that. Next slide, please. Oh, yes. And then, of course, we do community education like this. So we work with other organizations. We go to different schools. We do outreach events just to help our community understand the LGBTQ community a little bit better so that we can all coexist together better and help end discrimination in Sonoma County. A little bit more about our services and the awesome partnerships that we have. We do something called Queer Art Club, and we also have Self-Expression Camp. And this is a partnership with the Sonoma Community Center in the town of Sonoma. So Queer Art Club is for anyone ages 10 to 17, and it's every third Wednesday of the month. And then Self-Expression Camp is a summer day camp that we started last summer for LGBTQIA plus teens. We have a lot of really talented artists in our community, and it's a great way for young people to be able to express themselves and to meet other young people like them. We also partner with an organization called North Bay LGBTQI Families to do an event called Social Saturday. And this event is an intergenerational picnic in which people of all ages are welcome. And we gather outdoors to be both connected with nature around us and also to be COVID safe. And we just get to hang out with each other and build community. And we get to see people of all ages represented in our local LGBTQ community, which is really important. And this is every second Saturday of the month. We also partner with Trans Life, and Trans Life does an annual community conference and professional symposium. So it switches off each year. So one year they'll do a community conference where it is people within the LGBTQ community who come to this conference who can get resources and support and go to workshops and that kind of thing. And then the next year, it would be a professional symposium in which professionals from Sonoma County, whether they're lawyers or doctors or therapists or whoever, can come to this symposium and learn more about our community so that they can make sure that their services that they are providing are culturally competent and respectful of us. And then we also partner with some local groups who do support. So groups like PFLAG, TGNB, and FTM Sonoma County. And these are different groups who have, different missions, but are similar. So PFLAG serves loved ones of LGBTQ people. So if you are a family member or a friend of someone who is LGBTQ, then you can come to this group and get support around that and learn how to support your loved one. TGNB stands for Transgender North Bay, and it's specifically for trans women and trans feminine people. And then FTM Sonoma County is a support group for trans men and trans masculine people. So we let these groups use our community center and or our Zoom for their meetings. So these are some of the partnerships that we have. So we wanted to let you know that we actually have a social Saturday coming up this Saturday, and we would really love for you to be there if you are interested. So it is this Saturday, March 12th from 11 to 2, and it's in Cloverdale at Cloverdale City Park. And we'll be making art, we'll be doing Zumba, and the Zumba will be both in Spanish and English. And it's free, it's all ages, it's just a nice event for people to get to know each other and hang out in community. So we would love for you to be there. Okay, so now we've told you a little bit about who Positive Images is. We want to tell you a little bit, give you a brief introduction to the LGBTQIA plus community so that you have a little bit more information and knowledge about who we are. So this acronym stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, and asexual. And sometimes you'll see different versions of this acronym, right? Sometimes you'll see LGBT, sometimes you'll see LGBTQ. We like to try and use this long acronym whenever we can, just to be more inclusive and fit as many people into this acronym as we can. But the plus on the end is to symbolize that we could never fit everyone in our community into one acronym. We're a very diverse community with lots of different experiences and lots of different labels. So we really can't fit everyone into just one acronym. And so the plus is supposed to represent that and aims to include everybody else that we can't fit in this acronym. Now we're going to mention an acronym that you probably haven't heard before, and this acronym is SOGI. And SOGI stands for sex assigned at birth, sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. Sometimes when we talk about LGBTQ issues, people will say, well, I don't know, I can't really relate to it because I'm not a part of that community, you know? And so, you know, some people in this room are part of the LGBTQIA plus community. There's at least me. There might be other folks. But everybody in this room has a SOGI, regardless of who you are or how you identify. We all have a sex that we were assigned at birth, a sexuality, a gender, and a way that we express that gender. So we like to frame things in the way of SOGI to make it more understandable and relatable to everyone. So let's talk about sex versus gender. So when I say sex, I mean someone's biological sex characteristics that include your physical anatomy, things like your reproductive organs, your hormones, your chromosomes, any of that physical biological stuff. And doctors will assign a sex to a fetus or a baby based on some of these characteristics. But when we say gender or gender identity, that means someone's internal perception of their gender. Excuse me, your experience with your gender and what that means to you, regardless of what your biological sex is. And then when we say gender expression, we mean someone's external display of gender, how they dress, their behavior, their mannerisms, that kind of thing. And one of the most important concepts that I want to make clear to you all today is that sex and gender are not the same thing. And that can be really hard for us to wrap our heads around sometimes because we're taught for our whole lives that they are the same thing, but they're not. They're different. So this next slide shows us a really cute and helpful graphic that helps us understand all of these different parts. So this is the gender unicorn, and this isn't a graphic that I made. So if you ever want to look back at this, just Google the gender unicorn and you should be able to find it. So let's break this down. We can see that the gender unicorn is thinking about its gender identity because, as we just talked about, gender is in our head. It's who we know we are in our brain. So maybe the gender unicorn is female, maybe it's male, maybe it's something else, and we'll get to what the something else means in just a second. Then the sex assigned at birth is represented by this DNA strand here. And maybe the unicorn was assigned female at birth, assigned male at birth, or something else. And then these hearts represent who the unicorn is physically and emotionally attracted to. And this green dotted line encompassing all of the unicorn is its gender expression. So maybe it likes to be more feminine. Maybe it likes to be more masculine, maybe more androgynous or something else. So all of these different parts, they're going to interact with each other. And for some people, they're going to be the same, but they are separate categories. And that's the important takeaway here. Something that I like to say to help clear up the difference between gender and sexuality is gender is who you are and sexuality is who you love. I know this is a lot of information, so I just wanted to quickly open it up and see if there are any questions so far. Okay, well, we will also have time for questions at the end. Let's go to the next slide, please. So we've got a few more labels, some more terms regarding gender and sex here. So this first term, cisgender or cis, means that someone's gender matches the sex that they were assigned at birth. So to give an example, let's say a baby girl is born and the doctor says, "Congratulations, it's a beautiful baby girl." If that baby girl grows up and she says, "Yeah, I'm a girl, I'm a woman, that makes sense, that feels right," then her gender and who she knows she is matches the sex that she was assigned at birth, which means that she is cisgender or cis. But if someone's gender does not match the sex that they were assigned at birth, that means they are transgender or trans. I can use myself as an example here since I'm trans. I was assigned female at birth, but I don't feel like a woman. That doesn't feel right for me. And so my gender does not match the sex that I was assigned at birth, which is what makes me trans. So we've got a few different labels here that people might use to describe themselves, such as trans woman, trans feminine. This acronym here, AMAB, stands for assigned male at birth. We've got trans man, trans masculine, and AFAB, which means assigned female at birth. And then we also have non-binary genders. So people who are agender, gender queer, gender fluid, and we'll get more into what all that means in just a second. Now, sometimes people can get a little confused. They're like, if someone is a trans man, does that mean they're a man or a woman? I don't understand. So just to clarify, trans is just like a describing word, right? So a trans man is a man. You could take the trans right off there. But the word trans just describes his journey and how he got there, how he became a man, right? Same thing for a trans woman. A trans woman is a woman who just came to her womanhood, by the trans experience. It's also really important to remember that we shouldn't assign any of these labels to people unless they've done so for themselves first. We can't just look at someone and know who they are or how they identify or what language they're comfortable with. So we need to listen to people and how they describe themselves and then use that language accordingly. And this down here is the transgender flag, which is why we have that on this slide. So let's talk about what a binary is. A binary is something that is composed of two parts. And in our society, we usually view them as like polar opposites, totally different. So black versus white, gay versus straight, male versus female. We have two options and we see them as like totally opposite ends of the spectrum. But when we look at the world in such a binary way of this versus that, we leave a lot of people out. We leave out non-binary people as well as intersex people. Next slide, please. So let's talk about non-binary identities and what it means to be non-binary. So if someone is non-binary, that means that their gender falls outside of the gender binary. So they don't strictly fit in the male or female boxes. So I myself identify as non-binary. As I said, I was assigned female at birth, but I don't identify as female, but I also don't feel male either. And so non-binary is what feels right to me. There are a lot of different labels that people are coming up with to help describe their experience with gender, which is great. But we've got just a couple here on the screen for you. So this one right here, gender fluid, means that someone's gender changes and fluctuates. It's fluid like water. So it's going to be different for everyone, of course, but as an example, someone might wake up one day and feel more male or more masculine. And then maybe a few days later, they wake up and they feel more feminine or female. And then a few days after that, they wake up and they feel more non-binary, something else, right? This term down here, two-spirit, is really important to note for a few different reasons. So sometimes when we're talking about non-binary stuff, people will say things like, I think this is all made up. This is a bunch of new stuff. This is just because of the internet. And that's actually not true. We have records of people living outside of the binary for a really long time, as long as people have existed throughout history. And a really good example of that is in Native American communities. There are people who identify as two-spirit, who feel that they have both masculine and feminine spirits in the same body. And this has been going on in Indigenous communities for forever, for a really long time. So it's not that being non-binary is something that's new. It's more that it's new to most of us, because in the case of two-spirit people or people who lived outside of the binary in Indigenous communities, that was really squashed by colonization, right? So it's not that this is new, it's that it's been really suppressed. It's also really important to note that this label is exclusive to Indigenous communities, so it's inappropriate for non-Native people to use this term. Could you click again, please? Thank you. So let's talk about language. So pronouns are when someone is referred to in the third person and we don't use their name. In some languages, third person pronouns are gendered. In some languages, they're not, but in a lot of languages, they are. So in English, the traditional pronouns would be he, him, and she, her. And in Spanish, the traditional pronouns would be él and ella. But some people, they don't really fit with those pronouns. Those pronouns don't feel right. And so they might go for an option that is more gender neutral. So in English, people often use they, them pronouns when they don't feel like he, him, or she, her fits for them. So someone like me, I use they, them pronouns. And then in Spanish, people have been creating language that can be more gender neutral, since Spanish is very gendered. So originally, some people came up with AX, so they would put an X at the end, similar to how we would sometimes say like the Latinx community instead of Latino or Latina. But then recently, a lot of people have been saying, hey, that actually doesn't make any sense for Spanish to have an X in there. And so now a more common suggestion is to use AA, so to put an E at the end, which is why in my pronouns that I've put in my Zoom name here, I put they, them, AA. There are also what we call neo-pronouns, and these still aren't used quite as often as other pronouns, but more and more people are starting to use them. And it's language that people have created when they feel like he, she, or they doesn't really fit them. So the examples that we have down here are things like Z here or AM. So again, not seeing these used quite as much as other pronouns, but important to know about. One more click, please. Thank you. All right. So why are names and pronouns so important in the first place? Well, it's about respecting and validating a really core part of someone's identity. It's not a choice. It's not a joke. It's a really integral part of who that person is. And also, pronouns aren't preferred. They just are. Sometimes people will say, what are your preferred pronouns? But pronouns aren't a preference. They're mandatory. So we take issue with that language sometimes. So how can you be supportive of someone's identity and their pronouns? Well, first of all, if someone tells you their name and pronouns, use them. It sounds really simple, but it's really important. And sometimes people struggle a lot with it. So do your best to get it right. And share your own pronouns and ask for other people's pronouns when you meet them. So for example, you can say, hi, my name is Joy. I use they, them pronouns. What about you? And sometimes people feel really nervous about this, right? They're worried that asking for someone's pronouns is rude. But actually, on the contrary, many of us really appreciate it when you ask for our pronouns, because that shows that you want to get it right. So it's okay to ask for someone's pronouns. And consider adding your pronouns everywhere you're comfortable. So to your email signature, in your social media bios, in your Zoom name, like many people have already done in this meeting, which is awesome, because that makes it normalized and it makes trans people feel a lot safer in sharing their pronouns. So let's do a little bit of practice with pronouns in case you're having a hard time with this. So this person right here is Zach. He uses he, him pronouns. So we would say, he is really cool. I like him a lot. That backpack is his. For someone like Maggie, who uses she, her pronouns, we say, she is really cool. I like her a lot. That backpack is hers. And then for someone like me, who uses they, them pronouns, we would say, excuse me, they are really cool. I like them a lot. That backpack is theirs. Now let's go over what to do if you accidentally misgender somebody. First off, misgendering is when you use the wrong pronoun, name, or label for a trans or non-binary person. So if somebody accidentally said she or he for me instead of they, right? First of all, we want to say it's okay to make mistakes. Nobody is perfect, and we're all going to mess up sometimes. If you do mess up, you might feel bad, but try not to make it a big deal, because that's just uncomfortable for everybody involved. So just correct yourself and move on. Use the correct pronoun or name as soon as possible. And later you can thank that person for helping you to get it right. What really matters is that you are making an effort, because we can tell the difference when someone is trying, but just messing up sometimes, versus when someone isn't really trying at all. A little more about inclusive language. Our language can be really gendered, and that can make people feel really uncomfortable or like they're not welcome. So instead of saying boys and girls, you can say kids, children, youth, young people. Instead of ladies and gentlemen, you can say folks or y'all, guests, friends, something like that. And then instead of boyfriend, girlfriend, or husband, wife, you can say partner or spouse or significant other. And it might not seem like a big deal to you, but it can really make a big difference in making everyone feel welcome and included. We also want to make it clear that the impact of acceptance makes a really big difference on LGBTQ people's lives. So LGBTQ young people who have families who show rejecting behaviors, excluding them, shaming them, misgendering them, they experience higher rates of depression, suicidal thoughts, suicide attempts, and illegal drug use. But for LGBTQ youth with families who show accepting behaviors, who receive affection, support, and advocacy, they have lower rates of depression, suicidal thoughts and attempts, drug use, and they have better health outcomes, higher self-esteem, and stronger family relationships. Using the correct names and pronouns reduces risk of depression and suicide attempts in trans people. So 71% reported lessened symptoms of severe depression. 34% reported lessened thoughts of suicide. And we see a 65% reduction in suicide attempts. So just by being supportive of your LGBTQ loved one, by using their name and using their pronouns correctly, you can make a huge difference in their mental health and safety. So here are some tips on how to be an ally to the LGBTQIA+ community. An ally is someone who isn't a part of our community, but who still wants to support our equal rights, our movements, and who challenges homophobia and transphobia whenever they can. Allies are some of the most effective and powerful voices in our movement, so it's really important that you use your privilege. Basically, what this means is, if an LGBTQ person is being discriminated against, you as an ally have a lot of power in being able to put that to a stop or in supporting that person. By having an equality sign in your office, like we have here on the screen, or having some rainbow stuff at home, having some flags around, This is a really cute and easy way to show LGBTQ people that you are an ally and that you're a safe person to talk to. LGBTQIA plus youth report that the number one factor preventing suicide is connection to a caring and supportive adult or peer. And that person could be you. And you don't have to be an expert to be an ally. You don't have to understand everything in our community. You just need to be kind and do your best to support someone. So these slides are just some local resources for you to know about. So this first point is Positive Images, us, our information, our website and phone number. This support group is for trans Latinas, which is really awesome. That's good to know about. For our elders, there is Aging Gayfully and Sonoma Valley LGBTQ Seniors. LGBTQ Connection is an organization pretty similar to Positive Images, and they're a good resource to know about. They also have a good amount of resources in Spanish. The Santa Rosa Community Health Gender Clinic is a really good resource for people who are exploring their gender and need medical support with that. And they are really accessible. They take sliding scale, lots of different insurances. And Face to Face does STI and HIV prevention and needle exchange as well. Then on the national side of resources, there are a lot of hotlines out there, similar to like a suicide hotline, where if someone is struggling, they can call and get support. So this first one, Trans Lifeline, is by and for trans people, and is a really good resource for the trans community. The Trevor Project is really similar, but it's not exclusive to the trans community, it's to the whole LGBTQ community. Gender Spectrum is an awesome organization run out of Oakland, and their website has a lot of information about gender. So if you're still trying to understand things, they're a good resource. And they also have support groups for parents. So if you are the parent of an LGBTQ child, you can join their support groups. So I think that's just about it. That's all I have to share with you today. So I know that was a lot of information. And if anyone has any questions, I would love to do my best to answer them.